evening. This meeting is called to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. President Yanni, here. Vice President Trombley,
Here.
Treasurer Conway,
Here.
Secretary Meyer,
Here.
Mr. Anderson, here. Mr. Kraus,
Here.
Mr. Pugh.
Here.
All present. Initially, with Veterans Day being tomorrow, I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of the board to ask any veterans, if they wish, to please rise and so we can appropriately recognize you. But sincerely, we greatly appreciate your service to our country and owe you a great debt of gratitude. At this time, we have, in addition to our agenda this evening, is there a motion to amend the agenda to add for future action item C, the donation to auto technology class Brighton area schools?
Motion to amend.
Moved by Mr. Conway,
Support.
supported by Mrs. Meyer. Any discussion?
Did you say C or D?
It's for future action.
For future.
C. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Moved by Mr. Trombley.
Support.
Supported by Mr. Pugh. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Shining stars, Dr. Gray.
Tonight we have Mr. Brenner from Maltby Intermediate School, and he has a great announcement for one of his students.
Okay, thank you. Each year at this time, I have the honor of bringing to you a shining star. And as you all know, we do our Little Caesars Frozen Pizza Kit sales to help pay for 5th grade camp. And each year at this time, I get to bring the top salesperson in our 5th grade to you for a shining star. And this year, our top salesperson selling a whopping 54 pizza kits was Madison Kramer. So, impressive. And the great part about that, other than the fact that Madison's an amazing salesperson, is anything over 20 kits is helping go to our Camp Scholarship Fund. So all of the work that Madison and her family put in to sell those extra pizza kits sent another student to camp, and almost 2 students to camp, actually, if you look at the profit margins off of what they did. So and there's no small amount of work in delivering those frozen pizza kits because they're big and they're bulky and they're cold and they got to go out right away. So she did a great job, and if she looks familiar, her brother Zach, who is taping her right now, is our top salesperson last year. So if we can harness the power of these two for Brighton area schools, they are quite good at sales, and it's a wonderful thing they did. So we're just very proud of Madison and all the work she did.
Now, Mr. Brenner, was it our brother who set the record last year?
Madison might have outsold them by a few this year. By 6. But who's counting? All right. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we have the call of the public. If anybody wishes to speak, you'll have 3 minutes. Please step up to the microphone and state your name as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joellen Pizarczyk. And I wanted to start out by, I guess I don't know if they're here, but congratulating the newly elected board members. And then I also wanted to say thank you to Miles View for his number of years of service to the community, bringing his business acumen and all of his skills and talents and perspectives. I think it's something like 19 years, sir. Thank you so much. So I was thinking about all of the many rights and responsibilities of school board members and how hard your job is. And I want you all to know that I certainly, for one, appreciate it. But I was looking online at the Michigan Association of School Boards and the Michigan Department of Education websites about members' rights and responsibilities to the community. And I was really quite overwhelmed by it. I really was unaware of everything. I, for instance, did not know that members could be personally prosecuted for certain, approval of certain deficit budgets and things like that. But in any case, I think there might be a gap in what our community understands about your role and what it is. And I was thinking about ways that might be, eliminated. I think perhaps just some brainstorm ideas for your consideration. Community involvement, maybe a standing community advisory board made up of a number of people that could just be a sitting committee that ideas and input could be solicited from. I'd like to see the board meetings televised so more people would be participating. I know that's not a simple thing to do, but I think it could be arranged. I was wondering also if people, when they do the call to public, might be allowed to do a 3-minute PowerPoint presentation as opposed to just standing and talking. And finally, I wanted to share an idea that I got from one of our state senators when we were discussing some legislation that I had an interest in. And he pulled a card out of his pocket. And on that card, he called it his compass. And on that card, he had listed all of his top priorities and legal and ethical obligations that he felt that he owed to his constituents. And whenever a lobbyist comes into his office and is trying to be particularly persuasive, or any situation, he can pull his compass out of his pocket and share it, so that right up front they're all on the same page and they can understand where he is coming from when it comes to the way that he makes decisions. So I thought that might be an idea for our board members, and I'm sure if you need help putting it together, the guidelines are all on the Department of Education website. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak at this time? The first call of the public is closed. At this time, we have board reports. Mr. Tremlett?
Thanks. First thing, I'd like to thank Miles View and Bill Anderson as well for the time that they've spent on the board in the 3 years that I've been here, as well as the time they spent prior with their other terms on the board. I'd also like to thank the other 6 candidates that ran this past week. Thank you for the commitment that you were willing to make to the schools and to our kids, and to wanting to keep the momentum moving forward. And finally, I'd like to congratulate Dave Chesney and Ken Stahl and John Connolly. And I'd like to say that I'm looking forward to working with them and to continue moving the district in a positive direction. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tremlett. Are there any other board reports? Mr. View?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is one of my last meetings, and after 19 years, I look back into many of the things that I proposed and then worked on and tried to get done in the district, along with the rest of the board members. I've made a list, and I'm going to be presenting them at the next meeting for recommendation to be approved. And just to give you an idea on some of the things that I have been working on for many years, and especially the last few years, is one, reestablishing line items in the budget. Through the years, we have robbed the line items, and along with that, the children have paid the price, the taxpayers have paid the price, and it's time to get those line items back in place. Of course, we're not going to be able to do them immediately, but we should be able to do them within the next year or two. The other thing is elimination of pay-to-play. That's been going on for 15 years. We eliminated it twice and brought it back because we had to. I was one that agreed to bring it back, even though I didn't think it was right, but we needed to do that, and now it's time to put it to bed. Also, throughout the years, dealing with kids and listening to their parents and listening to the kids, there's a lot of kids who can't participate in activities because they don't have the money to do so. A lot of people in our community can afford it. There's that 20-25% that still can't do that. So I'm going to propose eliminating participation fees for students in things such as band, musicals, plays, athletics, and various curriculum type activities. John said robotics. Another one, I was on the first community ed board in 1968. I was a student here at Brighton. I was put on that board by Lyle Powers. That's Joyce Powers' late husband. So I followed community ed and the recreation part, which became SELCR and the seniors. And I know how it was all set up, how it was funded. And we have abused that funding for these organizations. And now it's time to get those line items back in order and make it fair to those organizations also. So I'm gonna be bringing up the elimination of user fees for those that are in the our taxpayers in the Brighton School District. I'm also going to bring up a resolution, irrevocable resolution, in regard to the shared service revenue. For many of you who don't know, shared service revenue is a non-sustainable revenue. It could be gone tomorrow. It's just like fund equity. It's how we got in financial trouble a few years back. We gave out increases and to salaries, and we used fund equity to pay for it. And when the fund equity was gone, all of a sudden we're in debt. Well, same thing could happen with shared services. We don't know where it's going to go. It's rather new. Dr. Gray and Dr. Gissinger and Dr. Suri have done a great job with it. It's here now, but again, we don't know if it's going to be here tomorrow. So I'm going to do an irrevocable resolution that this revenue stream cannot be used for sustainable expenditures. It can only be used for
One-time expenditures?
one-time expenditures, correct. So that's one of the last ones, the very last thing that I'm going to bring up, and this probably is not going to be one that many of our staff might not like, but it's something the kids need. All I've heard for several years are how the kids do not have enough space in their schedules for electives. And they want to participate in various electives, and it's almost impossible for them. And so I'm going to make a recommendation, since it's in the contracts, for a mandatory 7th hour for the high school. We had that years back, and when we got into financial trouble, we got rid of it. So those are going to be some of the things I'm going to bring up at the next meeting, put them in place to vote on it the meeting after. A lot's been done through the years. We've had good boards, we've had some bad boards, and it was time for me to go to pasture. I told everybody I got spanked, so I appreciate the support I've gotten in the past, and when I hear the voters say, "Miles, time to go," I'm ready. So thank you for all your support while I was here, and I wish the new members a lot of luck and the new board, and like Bill said, keep it moving in a positive direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hugh. Mr. Trombley, you have a bond chair's report regarding the bond committee and updates regarding the bond work.
Tonight, we'd like to ask Jeff Hamilton from Locke, who's our construction manager, for people that don't know what's happened is there's the locker room at the football field, was an issue with the floor where the thresholds are higher than the elevation of the floor, which in turn caused water to leak into the locker rooms, into our new locker room areas. And we've asked our construction manager and our architect to please give us something in writing, so for the future, we'll know 10, 12 years down the road that if there is an issue, that it's documented in writing. And I believe Mr. Hamilton's here to give us that tonight, as well as something from the architect, which was SHW, who is now stantec, something on their letterhead as well as to the proposed fix of how this will be taken care of. And I believe, Jeff, you have that as well, right? So if you could please tell the board what your recommendation would be. And if you want to just read the letters, that's fine as well.
Let's pass them down. All right, let's go through this item. I'd like to start out by thanking the board for letting me come to discuss this. We've talked in the committee a number of times. To date, we have put in over $42 million worth of work in the district on this bond alone. We've saved the district $2 million, of which we have used that to do additional projects, all within the bond dollars. So I think the team's done a great job, both from the design side with stantec and their group, along with ALK. Now we've managed all the way through from estimating on through construction. So Just thought I'd mention that because I think there's a real positive in what we've done out here in the district. Bill is correct. There was an issue that came up with elevations, the curb at the turf. Every component, concrete, asphalt, the track coating, the floor, the door, how it comes in, everything has tolerance that are allowable per the specification and per construction standard practices. The curb at the turf in one spot, so it's high by about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch. But that's over 500 feet, so that's pretty close. So when you take that along with the asphalt, that's allowable to have a 1/4 inch thickness on top of the layers. So you start adding the compounding of the two thicknesses of the asphalt plus the thickness of the track coating, and you take it to the extreme on every tolerance, then you suddenly have grown roughly, in the worst case scenario, about 1.5 inches, yay big. There's 3 doors in question. One's about 1.5 inch differential, one's about 1 inch, and one's about 3/4. All the other doors are fine. So it really compounded the problem because you have to get slope and proper drainage from the building to the track to the turf field. It all works as a system. Unfortunately, when you compound the allowable tolerances, they're all in a positive extreme, you've created an issue. So one thing we've talked to the design team in the future, instead of having a 1% pitch at the sidewalk, you could put 2 in. An extra percent would allow flexibility to get those tolerances to work. So they're, in future, when you're that tight of a system, they're gonna do that. So a couple things, stantec has reviewed our recommendation that essentially we're going to, and this has been reviewed with the bond committee, with Bill, Nick, and John out in the field. And essentially what we're gonna do is at 3 doors, we're gonna grind the floor surface off. We're going to essentially put a floor leveling system in there that's made for this application. And then we're gonna make that difference up. So we're gonna pitch the floor, which is already pitched. It's already pitched in there. There's floor drains in certain rooms. So we're gonna just pitch it a little more so that every single door in the building would be ADA compliant. It's not a requirement. The building is ADA compliant as it sits to this day, but it's desired by the board, and we agree with the board or with the bond committee that this should be addressed. We're not happy with the finished product ourselves. So the contractors that did the work are going to handle the work at our review and at their cost. There won't be any cost to the district. So I think they stepped up reluctantly a little bit because they are within tolerance, but they understand that it can't be a finished product that we could leave the district with. So we're in full agreement and we're going to deal with it. Any questions?
Yeah, let me ask you, on the 4th door, back on the, I guess it'd be the west side, team locker room.
Correct.
There's that ramp there already that's poured.
That was poured with this product that we're recommending.
When was that done?
That was done right away when the floor was poured because of the differential that we couldn't make up because that has 2 doors back to back.
Okay, right. So that was done back in...
That was done about a year ago, a little over a year ago.
Okay, that's holding up fine.
Holding up fine.
And again, that was the ADA issue to be able to get in and out, right?
Yep. And in hindsight, we probably should have done all the doors at that time. That was, unfortunately, that's not how it worked out.
Well, and that was going to lead me into the next question. Back to your contract and the notification to the board. Was there any notification at that time, do you remember, as to that being done for that particular reason?
We reviewed it in the field with administration. I think you, Bill, were probably out there and saw some of that. I can't honestly say that I know it was in minutes in our bond committee meetings. We talked about it.
Okay. I'd like to see those, but again, anything in the future, I'd just like to call you back up to review your 14.2.5 in your contract, which talks about the construction manager, and he's responsible for the workmanlike performance, and he'll notify us in writing if he does see any issues in the field. on a prompt basis so we're all aware of what the issue is. As well as I'd like you to, in the future, or for future reference, if there is anything else, 14.2.10 that talks about the timely manner of when you're supposed to contact us with your methods and means.
Okay, I think we have been talking about this for quite some time. I was trying to get a common resolution that everyone would accept it. I think that's kind of why there has been a delay. So we are going to address it. We haven't walked away from it. We're in full agreement with the board and the bond committee that it needs to be addressed. So, you know, I think we've done some good stuff here in the district, so I'd hate to have a little item become a bigger issue.
Are there any other comments or questions at this time?
I guess I got a question. When we do a bid out like this, I guess I have to bill a little bit as much as Mr. Hamilton. We get drawings, right, for each subsection, so the floor, the doors, the track, what else is that, the three main?
Turf and curb.
Turf
Yeah.
and curb. So we get all those drawings. Does the committee review them with, you know, so there's no review of the drawings when we get them?
Really, there wouldn't be, Jay, anybody that really understood them unless you were a civil engineer, and that's what you did.
Well, but I'm just, you know, to Mr. Hamilton's point is, and yours, is we want to prevent stuff like this from happening. So in my industry, that's one of the things that we look at, the first time we look at a print is a tolerance stack. And then you look at a tolerance stack and you say, whoa, if everybody does migrate to the positive side or the high side, we might have a problem. And, you know, that's a DFMEA if you're an engineer. I'm not, so if I use that wrong, just, you know, I'm a sales guy. But you do those things and say, whoa, wait a second, if everything goes to this side, we may have a problem, and then we go back to the drawing board, and like your family said, we'll cut the tolerance on this, maybe we'll say that we're gonna pitch this different, you do different corrective actions. I just wanna make sure, as we go forward, that we're kind of looking at some of those things, because there's a lot to pay attention to, and not normally does everything shift to one side on a tolerance like that.
And that's what we pay our $1.5 million to AUK to do, and that's what we've paid Stantec over $3.5 million to act in our best interest to design it per se.
Yeah, no, I agree. And a good example is we do a page turn before every project. The team's involved. Bill sits in that meeting, and Nick and whoever's involved, and we all usually put up on the screen and walk through that. A good example of some of the items that we have dealt with, for instance, when we rerouted the water line that was required for the stadium, at that time, we were thinking about how we were going to tie the pool addition, and Bill was a big part of that discussion, how we were tying everything together, and that we had to place this line so we didn't have to rework it when the new addition came into play. So we had to kind of lay out where that was going to go and ultimately deal with that, and those are the kind of issues so we dealt with, not necessarily a tolerance issue, but we were thinking down the road. There's a lot of that does occur in the meetings, and we do look at tie-ins. Good example where the pool additions tying in, the original intent of how they planned to tie it in couldn't be constructed with the timing of how we had to occupy and use the facility. So for the school district to continue to use it, we had to work the structure a little differently at the entrance vestibules. So that was all discussed in the group at the bond committee meeting, so.
And I just think that what you're saying is, this happened, and we're fixing it.
Correct.
Those are the things that, you know, in this type of a project, we have to look at down the road as far as, you know, mitigating situations like this. That's all. There was no.
Right.
You guys are doing a great job with this, and it's good work getting the contractors that come in and do this work at no cost to the district. So that's what I really appreciate at the end of the day.
Right, and I think there'll be a nice product when you're done, so I wouldn't, you know, I'd be more than happy with it. Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you.
Are there any other additional board reports at this time? 4 action items. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of October 27, 2014 as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Trombley. Support. Supported by Mrs. Meyer. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Abstain.
All those abstain? Motion carries 6-0. 1 abstention. Is there a motion to approve the contract extension for 2012 Bond Series 2 and 3 Technology Services as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Trombley. Supported by Mr. Conley. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries 7-0. Is there a motion to approve the unpaid leave of absence request for Melissa Ramala as presented?
So
Moved by Mrs. Minor,
Support.
supported by Mr. Anderson. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries 7-0. For future action, 2013-2014 audit report. This should be an exciting report. Dr. Bustina.
actually, I don't have much to report about it, as our auditors are going to come at your next meeting and present it in great detail to you. I just wanted to point out the most interesting page in the audit report is page 50. If you wanted to refer to that, you can see where we ended up our fiscal year. I am pleased to report that we cut our deficit in very, very close to half this fiscal year, so that is tremendous progress. We are hoping to close in on that during our 14-15 school year.
Thank you, Dr. Bissinger. Schools of Choice Program, second semester. Dr. Gray.
Yeah, for our second semester, we're going to offer limited school of choice in grades 1st through 12. We don't need to at the kindergarten level at this point, primarily due to the fact that we have scheduled so tight that if we had 4 or 5 kids show up, it would open an entirely new section and would throw off all of our balance across the district. With limited 1st grade through 12th grade, we can take a waiting list. We only have to place 1. We feel comfortable enough, even with the tight squeeze at the rest of the grades, that we can fit 1 in. But in some of the grades, it might only be 1 because we have 2 or 3 spots left across the entire grade level, and we might have move-ins, so we have to leave a little bit of cushion in relation to that. We are well below the 2 seats per class that we typically like. In some buildings, we're below 1 in terms of open seats per section, so we are staffed incredibly tight. We're staffed about as efficient, especially this year at the high school, that you possibly could be. And so we are looking to just backfill any move-outs that we might have in terms of grades 1 through 12.
Thank you, Dr. Gray. And donation to auto technology class.
We'll recommend in a couple weeks that the donation of a Saturn L200 sedan, approximate value of $2,500, be accepted from Motown Automotive Company in Brighton/Farmington to the auto tech class at Brighton area schools, and we will be recommending that under Board Policy 7230, which is all gifts, grants, and requests having a value of more than $1,000.
Thank you, Dr. Gray. For information, curriculum instruction, Dr. Suri.
Thank you. I'd like to begin tonight by just sharing with the board. Last week we had the My Google conference at Brighton High School, sponsored by McCall and co-sponsored by Brighton area schools. It was put on by a Brighton community businessman, John Sowash, with lots of help from one of our own, Lynette Dagg, and of course the technology staff pitched in the actual day of the training too. Last year, this is our second year of having it. Last year there were 600 out-of-town guests frequenting our shops and restaurants and certainly our school district. This year they had just over 700 is what the early reports were. They were hoping for 1,000. A great turnout the day before at their workshop. So I think Lynette's back there. She's keeping her head low, but she deserves a lot of credit because without her, Mr. Sowash would had a real time getting this put together. Such a big event. So she was a great partner for him. Also, just want to share with the board tonight, the last couple of weeks, months actually, we've had school improvement plans coming from the buildings. And I've brought for you tonight an at-a-glance, and there are some copies on the back table as well, of the district improvement plan. So everything you heard from the schools is on here somewhere, and then plus some things, because the schools really focus on achievement. So that you'll hear over and over again, they're working on math scores and reading scores and now science and all this academic scores. Well, the district improvement plan touches on that too. That's a given. Like, of course, we're going to be working on our academic achievement, but we also work on process goals, and you can see those in the lighter blue on the colored sheet, that will strengthen the conditions that support learning for all kids. And within that, the green below that, those are the initiatives, like the goal areas, assessment, literacy, response to intervention. You hear a lot about RTI, they talked about in their presentations. Best practice, instruction and professional development. And then the things below that, those are the actual names of the strategies or the events or the initiatives. So that's one big goal. The second big goal is that Brighton area schools will strengthen 21st century learning and thinking skills. So that's communication, collaboration, creative thinking, critical thinking, creativity, and innovation. And again, instructional technology, career technical education, inquiry-based learning, that's all in there as well. And then the last one is Brighton area schools will create a balanced assessment system for continuous improvement. And that's just having very intentional data assessments and then data collection to inform our program next steps, whether it's instructional or program initiatives. So I'm real busy keeping all these things going all the time, as you can imagine. But that's why last time we met, I thanked the schools, because obviously I could not do all these things, but it's an amazing list actually of everything that's happening all at once. Almost anything that happens in this district could find a place on this sheet, and so you can, I even hole punched it for you so you can keep it and refer to throughout the year. And that's all I have tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Stchoryk. Dr. Gistinger.
Yes, I wanted to point out to the board that we have in your packet the bills of October 23rd through 31st, and I will refrain from making additional comments until our auditors are here at our next board meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Gistinger. And Dr. Gray, Superintendent of Human Resources.
We're coming down, we're through the first marking period, headed into the second marking period and the end of the semester. There's usually a little bit of movement staffing-wise typically that we have to work through. I anticipate we'll have the same this year. There'll also, like we talked earlier, be a balancing of the school of choice as we open the window. We're pretty excited at this point to continue to push the positive message from our school system, as we have a lot to be proud of, especially as we head into the recruiting season for the second school of choice window. And as we pass by early winter and head into late winter, early spring, we also run into the most proficient time that Dr. Gistinger and myself and Dr. Stchoryk can have for shared service recruiting. Matter of fact, the other day we had another school in our office that constituted nearly 100 more shared service students, and I believe we'll be able to grow it again, even beyond what we did this year. I'm glad Jack Pilon's not here because he's kind of sick of Maria and I pushing on him to go get more and more and more, but we're going to take a different approach and start doing some services outside of counties that even touch our ISDs. So we have one of those in place. We're kind of testing that this year through Jackson. It's working out really well. We'll continue to push that particular envelope in terms of shared service recruitment. On another positive note, I got elected as MASA Region 8 president for next year. So what that means, it means more work for me. So it's not great for me. But what it means is we get a great connection with Washtenaw and some other counties that I'll oversee for next year. And we might be able to even create more relationships beyond that will allow us to leverage more of those resources and continue to build the strong financial background that we see heading into the future.
Congratulations, Dr. Gray.
I'm glad. It's not a good thing. More work. I must have missed the meeting or something.
I was thinking condolences was also appropriate.
It's all right. It's good work.
Quick question. Do we have St. Mary's for shared
You're gonna have to be
services?
more specific. 'Cause we have
Orchard
several-
Lake?
Several. St.
Orchard Lake
Mary's.
St. Mary's?
Yeah.
Pickney?
Oh, yeah.
I think
I have the
so.
list
I
on my
can't.
desk. If you ever want to see, I have the list of the 40 plus.
I think we do. Pretty sure we do.
I'm 99% sure we do.
I think so.
I think we have, didn't we recruit, we acquired St. Mary's Orchard Lake also?
No,
That's
tried.
that's
It was
one
this
more.
close.
We'll circle back.
Thank you, Dr. Gray and Dr. Gistinger and Dr. Suri as well. And student representative, on behalf of the bridge, Cassie.
Our fall trimester will be ending on November 25th. Our winter trimester will begin on December 2nd. Friday, November 14th, the peer leaders, as well as some of the other students, will be taking a field trip to Gleaners for their Kids Helping Kids program and learning about the history of the facility. They will so that we can start our own food bank here at the Bridge to support our community. The Bridge had an assembly for Anti-Bully Week. We had students put a word or a name representing a time that they were bullied and then discussed it at the assembly. We finished the assembly with a video about bullying. It was impactful for the student body. Our Thanksgiving Day feast will be November 25th. We hope you guys can come. The artwork our students will be submitting for the Homeless Awareness Week will be displayed November 19th from noon to 7 at the Howell Opera House. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us, and I believe you were recently elected.
To Mayo Stars, yeah.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
And would you like to briefly just share what?
Mayo Stars is where all the alternative high schools come together, and this is my first year on it, so I don't know much about it, but I like I'm part of leadership. I'm a student leader, so I tried it out.
Congratulations. Thank you for joining us this evening. At this time, we have the second call of the public. If anybody wishes to speak, please step up to the microphone. You'll be allowed 3 minutes, and please state your name. It appears that nobody wishes to speak. The next meeting will be November 24th, and this meeting is adjourned.